Hello and welcome. Today's welcoming ritual. So I want you to think about it for a second. What are things we see in a historical text, okay? What are the important things that a historical text has that maybe a fiction book doesn't have, or scientific text? So what are the things that really make it a historical text? Pause the video and think of some things. Okay, so hopefully you've thought of some things. Some things that we see in a historical text are dates, okay? We're going to see dates of when things happened in maybe people's lives, maybe in the history of a country, in the history of the world, okay? So dates are going to be one of those things. Another thing that we're going to see, these are going to be true facts, okay? It can't be a historical text if it's made up. So these are actual things that happened in history. And then another thing we're probably going to see is we're going to see the events in order, okay? So we are going to see the events in the order that they happen in. All right. Awesome. So I want you to look with us today. We are going to be going over our lesson, 02.05. First, we are going to just refresh our brains about what explicit and implicit means. And then after we do that, we are going to read a story together. And this is the story that you are going to be using on your quiz today. Okay? So explicit. Okay? So explicit and implicit are words that you're going to hear that show relationship. And so when I say relationship, I'm not talking about like girlfriend, boyfriend relationship or like friendship, okay? I'm talking about it shows a connection between one thing and another thing, okay? So for example, explicit means the relationship is directly stated, okay? So that means they mention it very clearly in the story, okay? In a historical text, something that's going to let you know that this is a fact and it's directly stated are the signal words first, then, next, okay? Those are sequence of steps. So here's an example. So here's our sentence. It says, the regular trek of hundreds of bison caused the Natchez Trace pathway to form. Okay, so we know that this pathway formed because the hundreds of bison crossed it, okay? So our explanation, this is an example of an explicit relationship because it says it straight in the text, okay? It uses the word caused. We don't have to use any guessing. We know for a fact that the bison caused the pathway to form, okay? When we're talking about implicit, we're going to jump back to what we talked about in the beginning of the year. This is what you see in the text, so what you see with your eyes, and what you know with your head put together. So it's going to be what you see in the text, but you're going to have to add a little information, okay, from your head. It's not all going to be given to you. Okay, so let's look at an example. This example sentence says, historians believe that Natchez Trace pathway was originally made by herds of bison on their way from Mississippi River to Salt Licks in Nashville, Tennessee. So our explanation, this is an implicit relationship because it doesn't state that this is a fact, okay? It says that they believe this could be true. But we can infer the relationship between the bison and the pathway is the bison made the pathway, okay, because of what it says, okay? So in that one, we kind of got to use what's in our heads. It's not a straight cut fact, but they do mention it as a possibility. So we've got to use what they give us, plus what's already in our heads, okay? So what we can get to. Okay, so we are going to read this story called The Mound Builders. And let me see. Here we go, The Mound Builders. And as we go, I want you to try to answer the questions along the way. Okay? So this is a historical text. Okay, so it's going to be about something that actually took place in history. So really be listening to it and know that this is not made up. The Mound Builders, written by Imola Nida. Okay, so we start off with a table of contents, with an introduction. On page 3, what are mounds? Page 4, a timeline. 5, characteristics. 6, day-to-day life. 8, summary. And 9, glossary. So that kind of gives us an outline about what we're going to be talking about, right? It shows us what's going to be on each page. Introduction. Long before Christopher Columbus arrived in North America, cultures were already thriving. Native Americans lived in communities, traded with neighbors, and followed rituals on a daily basis. Today, these former communities are being studied by archaeologists. They want to understand the life and legends left behind. The Natchez Trace Pathway spans 3 states and provides an opportunity to view the magnificent mounds along the way. How is the Natchez Trace Pathway related to the archaeologist's studies? So take a minute and think about that. How do you think it's related? Okay, first we're going to look, is it directly stated in the text? Is it explicit? Or is it implicit? Do you have to read the text and then also think on your own about what it could be? This is implicit, so we got to read the text and think on our own. Okay, and the Natchez Trace Pathway is around these mounds, okay? The magnificent mounds that were created by these Native Americans, okay? And so that's going to be a part of their study. What are the mounds? Imagine clusters of grass knolls that are wider than the pyramids and 3 to 75 feet high. Upon study, the knolls are structures made of sand and clay. Multiple sites can be found in the eastern United States, such as in Missouri, Louisiana, and in Alabama. Presidents Warren G. Harding and Harry S. Truman each declared the mound sites as national monuments. Unfortunately, several mounds have been destroyed by roads, communities, and farmland. By studying the mounds, archaeologists are learning more about a culture that existed long before our own. A timeline. Let's explore the timeline of when the mounds were discovered. So look at this. Does this look familiar? It's a timeline. Remember that timelines provide you with information about when events occurred, what happened, and how much time has passed between them, okay? So we know as the line goes on, it gets closer to the present day, so it gets closer to now times. The further on the left we go, okay, so towards the beginning of the line, is going to be further back in time. Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto saw the mounds. He noted that few natives remained, and those who did were not friendly. Okay. Uh-oh. So which one occurred first? The Europeans or the making of the mounds? Okay, so I think that's what it says. Well, let's do a different question because I can't read that one. Which happened first? The Native Americans created the mounds? Or, which one happened first? Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto discovered the mounds, or English explorers landed in North America? Which one happened first? And try to explain your answer using the timeline. Okay, so hopefully you said that Christopher Columbus was an English explorer. He came in 1492, which on our timeline is before Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto saw the mounds in 1539. Characteristics. During the woodland or Mississippian periods, the cultures were hunter-gatherers. Therefore, water was usually close. Many villages were surrounded by ditches, which also helped to grow corn, beans, and squash. How is living near water related to the hunter-gatherer culture? Okay, how is it related? And I want you to think about if this is explicit information or implicit information. Can you see it in the text, or do you have to think about it and create your own answer? Okay, so the text does give us some clues, but it doesn't give us the direct answer to this question. So it is implicit, okay? The clue that it gives us is that crops grew around these areas. So how is living near the water related to being a hunter-gatherer? Well, living near the water would mean that the crops grew easier and they could gather them easier, okay? It might also mean that animals come to the water to drink and they can hunt the animals when they come. Travel and trade happened. Found items such as mica and copper support this assumption. Surplus vegetables and grains would be traded as well. Also present was a communal area which allowed tribal celebrations. Several elevated areas served two purposes. First, the elevations brought the tribal leaders closer to the heavens. Second, safety needs were met by improving visuals of approaching dangers. So when they were up high, they could see people or maybe things that would be of a danger to them coming closer. Most communities made pottery. This art form relied on sand, clay, and water. Day-to-day life. Depending on the time period and the tribe, day-to-day life was different. However, archaeologists have made educated guesses. Cosmic elements, the sun, the moon, the four directions, are part of all studied communities. Inscribed pottery shows a cross enclosed by a circle as a repeated pattern. Spirals, which indicate the continuity of life, are also prevalent. Artwork shows effigies of animals from the mundane turtle to lofty eagles. The number 7 seems important. Several excavated tombs show 7 beads and 7 arrowheads buried with the skeleton. So what do the artifacts mentioned in this paragraph tell you about the culture of the mound builders? Okay, I'm going to let you answer that by yourself. The Cahokia settlement in present-day St. Louis dates to 1050 CE and has been identified as a matriarchal culture. The female was Mother Earth. The sky was male. The culture combined the two elements. Many artifacts show females with high, flat foreheads. On the other hand, Moundville in modern-day Alabama, which dates to 1200 CE, has been identified as a patriarchal culture. Unearthed pottery shows strong patriarchal culture. Unearthed pottery shows strong masculine figures. there are few representation of females. To build the day-to-day life continued. To build the awe-inspiring mounds, extensive physical labor was needed. Scientists predicted about 35 pounds of dirt would be hand-scooped into woven baskets. These loaded baskets would then be carried to the site. The earth would be dumped. Next, it would be packed and moved using the variety of simple tools. These could be hands, wooden sticks, and mussel shell hose. The act of building was thought to be a spiritual experience since the structures were closer to heaven. Very few artifacts suggest an aggressive culture. There were no clubs or heavy tools perceived to be weapons. There are many fishhooks, pendants, and weights. However, some skeletal remains show damage caused by arrowheads, which suggests some aggression was expressed. Other skeletons indicate an overall healthy culture. Scientists believe this is partly due to a matriarchal society. The women care for and tend for all equally. By comparison, in the patriarchal society, signs of iron deficiency and tuberculosis were noticed. This implies different care for different roles and genders. Okay, so look at implies, that word implies, because we've been talking about implicit. Okay, so that's something that they came to, that's an idea that they came to using the facts that they were given. But that's not an actual fact. Summary. Christopher Columbus and others came to North America to discover and colonize. They arrived just before a culture of mound builders totally disappeared. Initially, the explorers did not believe these mounds were built by the native inhabitants. Archaeological studies have shown the culture to be more diverse and advanced than the explorers ever expected. Okay, so here's the glossary, and we're going to end here today. All right, make sure that you go do the quiz 02.05. If you have any questions, message me. All right, great job today, guys. I will see you on Monday.